Thank you, Pearl, for coming and exhibiting here at Timeless Textiles. It's such a treat to have you here.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure and privilege to be shown in your gallery.
Wonderful. Now I'd love you to talk a bit about all the massive work that you put into this exhibition.
Yes, well, I am a textile artist, which means obviously that my favourite medium is cloth, and I print on it and I alter it through a lot of complex processes. I print in multiple different ways. Pretty much my favourite go-to technique is stenciling, but I also use silk screens. I free paint and do a combination, often multiple combinations of that kind of stuff on textile. For about a decade, for about 10 years, I have used only upcycled fabrics. So I collect used textiles, vintage textiles. It's very easy to source remnants of fabrics that are brand new, never been used, meters and meters of them, very cheaply. I'm not a textile purist. I don't care whether what I collect and use is pure cotton, linen or silk. I will quite happily use a synthetic textile if its colour appeals to me, or if it's got a print or something interesting happening. I'll use it and put it back out into the world in an altered state. So when I make a garment, there are many processes to go through. So first of all, there's that stage of collecting the textiles, some of which are just a monochrome plain colour. Some of them already have patterns or some embroidery or stitching on them. So I have a large collection, several cubic metres in my home and studio, because I need a wide variety of resource to draw on. So generally I work in a very intuitive way. I don't really keep drawings or collect pictures or anything like that. What I respond to is seeing a print, a pattern, a colour or a colour combination, and I just let my unconscious mind react to that. You know, I might see some pink and orange together, and I'll go into the studio and I'll pull out a whole lot of fabrics that have those colours, and then I put them together. So it's very much like a collage process. So once I've collected all the textiles, then I decide on some sort of mark to print on them. So I'll go through my stencil collection and choose a stencil, and then I get to choose another colour. So then immediately I'm working with 3 layers of colour. There's what's going to be the background fabric, and then there's going to be a different colour on top, and then on the 3rd layer on that is a print that I'll stencil or silk screen or somehow transfer onto that surface, maybe by free painting, free marking in some way. So when that textile has been formed up with its print on it, I often then cut it up again and patch it together with other colours and do a whole range of sort of textile embellishment on top of that. That might include just plain stitch lines. It might be embroidered stuff, either by hand or from my sewing machine. It could be reverse applique, which is a very favoured textile technique for me. Reverse applique I use a great deal, or just direct applique, putting fibres on top or patches. So every garment I make has a multiplicity of these layers to form up the surface. And it's a delight for me to be here today to see these garments here. I think I have 18 or 20, I've lost track a little bit, and this represents about 18 months work for me. A single garment would seldom take me less than 30 hours. More commonly, I will spend often weeks, perhaps up to 80, 100 hours just working on the surface to make it really tell a story, a complicated story, because I don't really make simple clothes.
You do not.
They're complicated.
Now, Pearl, I'd love you to talk about these beautiful figurines.
Yes, the figures. Initially, when I was planning this exhibition a year in advance, I was only going to make wearable art. A long time ago, back in the 1990s, I was involved in a textile art scene in Newcastle that revolved very much around a very well-known, famous shop, which is sadly no longer with us, Anne's Glory Box. And Gloria McKinnon, the owner of that shop, fostered much interest in textile art during that era of the 1990s, late 1990s. She brought over many American women who were beginning to revive an old form of doll making, cloth doll making. And I had, in the 1990s, dabbled around a little bit with porcelain doll making as a hobby and found myself really frustrated because I was really only interested in the surface embellishment rather than actually the making of the figurines. So when I saw advertised in a magazine a symposium at Anne's Glory Box down in Newcastle, which was only a half hour's travel from where I lived in the country at the time, I was absolutely ecstatic. And I went to this symposium, which was the very first of a number, 4 or 5 that went on over the years after that, and met a wonderful group of like-minded women who were interested in sculptural forms of making figures. And over the years that I attended those symposiums and networked with those other women, we learned amongst us many skills for creating human figures, essentially. I never really had a sentimental connection to that form of art making. I didn't see it as making dolls or see it as a poignant thing to make something for another little girl. I was never trying to recreate my childhood doll. I always saw it in a high art way as the feminine figurative, and I want, as a woman textile artist, very proud of my womanhood and working in the historical traditional skills that women created over hundreds and hundreds of years when we were confined to the home, to domesticity. We couldn't go to art school. We definitely could not get trained to use the masculine style of art expression. We weren't painters. We worked with cloth, fibre, we knitted, we sewed, we created three-dimensional forms in clothing, and heaps of skills related to surface embellishment, stitching, embroidery, patchwork, glorious things. So I wasn't even aware of it at the time that I was actually engaging in a sort of political art form, because the doll making is very much, making those soft toys is very much a way that young girls, females, are trained to actually enjoy having a baby, I guess, to nurture. So, but to me, it didn't come out of that sentimental thing. It came out of my desire to work in a traditional area of women's artistry, and making the figures was all about showing off my skill at surface embellishment, and the figures seemed to appeal to me as the ideal way to talk about surface embellishment. So it was quite a surprise to me when the last time I sort of made dolls very seriously for about 10 or 12 years. until around about 2008, 2009, and then I sort of petered out of inspiration and felt like I'd said everything I could, and I moved on to going back to making the clothes. So when I was working in the studio about 6 months ago, I suddenly had a desire to make a figurative form again. And this is how these figures, I have 5 of them in the gallery, have sort of come back into my art making, narrative making in the last year. They're sort of different from the forms I used to make. They're not childlike dolls. They actually represent more like mature female forms. They're somewhat larger than the way I used to work 15 years ago. These dolls range in size from about 70 centimetres to about 1 metre high. And also I've been using various mediums to harden the surfaces because I don't want them to be as soft and flexible as the old doll forms that I used to make. So although from the outside they look still soft, they still look fibrous, to the touch they're actually quite hard, which makes them quite durable. Because they are very much to me sculptures, and I'm more comfortable describing them as figurines. I definitely do not consider them dolls.
Pearl, congratulations. I think that this so speaks of your skill, your passion. They're absolutely beautiful. It's wonderful to have the gallery alive with colour and design. So thank you for exhibiting here at Timeless Textiles.
As I said, it's an absolute pleasure, and I'm thrilled to be able to share my new art with women who love textiles.
Yes, it's wonderful. Thank you.